about an RPC. So if you start with a very simple RPC, so it has a server and we are like client. So we can register one function or many number of functions. If you observe carefully, here there was a built-in function which is POW, which I exposed. At the same time, so whichever you want to register functions means what are the logic you want to do. The logic you will register. From the right side means on the client side, they will execute that specific logic. So if you give like a register with some other pseudonym, with that name only they can access. Even if you see in this case, you are creating an instance and you are exposing it. With respect to instance, what all things can be done that can be executed. So in this scheme, these RPCs, what you can understand is whenever we have some kind of logic, that logic, if we want it to be executed, you are going. So now the logic, is it executed at the client side or at the server side? Server side only. But so from the client side, you are getting an interface, like how better to handle it. So this is how it works. Next, so within the RPCs, so the other part is like after RPCs, we have into the SOAP interface. So basically, what is a SOAP interface? SOAP is also like a old interface. Nowadays, no one is using it. But like it is also one kind of interface where people used to transfer the data. So primarily SOAP interface, I don't want to create now, but like to tell the same that. So if you want to work with the SOAP interface, you need to work on a module called as zip. There are others also few, but like zip is like most popular. So pip install zip. So if you want to understand the concept of SOAP, there is something called as WSDL. So WSDL is a concept which we should be aware of. So then only we'll understand what is a SOAP. So SOAP, the interface itself won't look something odd. It is like an XML only. So if you see a traditional XML, it says XML version like that, right? But you have some kind of header in the top. So WSDL. So every SOAP will have this kind of header. So WSDL is the interface which can actually help. So WXML for the, so how do you compose the thing? How do you write and others? So here we don't deal much, but I will tell typically that everything has a WSDL interface. They will specify about the schema and others. These are all the very built-in things. WW, so the schema dot XmlRPC and so and so. And within the WSDL, we will have the types and the schema elements. Within that, each element you will have a value. So these values will be carried out, and we need to read from it. It is something dealing with the calculator dot ASM so and so. Some calculator information they are passing. So see, addition, subtraction, multiplication, they have all the things. Now, if they want to use it, so see, there are consumption and so server side and client side. So in terms of the client side, I'm not developing here, but if I want to consume it, so I need to have a WSDL link for anything. Once I have, I can do like this. I can get the WSDL link and I can use a zip.client. So first we need to install it and zip.client. And so from that service.add of so and so. If you observe, so it has a service.add. So the same service.add we are using it. So if you observe here, so add is like a functionality. So control F. Yes, here add, so multiply, all these things, divide operations, all these things are there. So it is giving like the things, minimum how many, maximum how many, what should be the values. So whatever the value you give, it is taking as int A, it is taking as int B, or it is like what is the minimum maximum they give. So like that you can ask the user for the values and you can do the operations. But sir, is the code here? No. So code is somewhere in the server and they created like an interface for us. So instead of exposing the entire code to the end user, so user don't know. User will know only these things. Add, I need to give what are the limits and others. So what would be the add response? So response will be like this. That would be the result. So like that they have. So this is one better modification compared to the others. So that's the reason if you do service.add and if you give, you can consume the result. So service.divide, service.multiply, service.division like that. So whenever we are working, we get it. It is purely like a client side. So nothing to do with the server. So if I need to work on it, copy, so cd, uh, so install, so hyphen capital U, zip. So zip we need to install. So once zip is installed, we can work. It will do the collections and we works on it. Then see here, I can consume from it. Like that, if there are any WS SOAP interfaces, I think a Cricinfo is one of the important thing. Earlier I used to work on it. Cricinfo has like a SOAP interface. So wherever you see this WSDL interface file, you can take that file and pass on to the client. So then it will understand the interface and it can work. So now if I say Python SOAP examples and so, see it is doing the execution because this is a valid. If there are any valid SOAP interfaces, you can go. Unfortunately, I'm not seeing too many without authentication, so free WSDL too much. But if you find something, please use it. So this is how you to consume. So next, after the SOAP interface, we have, so the other one is about the REST APIs. This is the most important thing. So 04 REST API. So all these things are API. API means like application programming interface. For that application, programmatically to access, what is the way? That's what you're telling. So in terms of consuming, so first like consuming APIs, I will do a consuming APIs. So then like consuming the other side, I will tell the other thing afterwards. First, what is an API? How things will be there within it? What are the data points? You need to have one kind of applications to work on it. So basically, yes. So first of all, if you want to work on anything, you need to have, uh, if I go back to the browser, I need to find something like a REST API. So free REST API. So what are all the REST APIs which are free? So you get it. So the most common is like a rapid API. So rapid API means, so it is like a one kind of place where all kinds of APIs are there. So it has like free public APIs and like other APIs also there. So if I say like any API here, I can work on it. So if say weather API, if I go, so weather API gives like weather information. So for every API, when you are working, you need to understand how to work. Whenever they are exposing APIs itself, they will give the basic code. Nowadays, things became very easy. If you are working on Python, so there are multiple modules like http.client and request is another thing. So they will give the code ready-made for you. So you need to understand how to consume, or else they will give some kind of interface for you so that you can work on it. So if I can start with, so REST API. So what is the REST API? So it is like a representative state transfer protocol. State transfer protocol. Till now, what you have seen in the RPCs, the code is getting executed. Whereas in SOAP interface, you got a WSDL interface. In the WSDL interface, whatever is there, based upon that, you are executing. But somewhere the code is executing. But if you want the state of the database to be sent, the true state, means how many records are there, what is the current state. So that is called as a representative state transfer protocol. So what is this representative state transfer protocol means? So they came with some kind of organization. You know, generally when you do any DB operation, we have something called as CRUD operations. CRUD means like create. So in CRUD, C means create. So read, then like update and delete. Whenever you're working with any database, these were the main things. It's not just database, even a file system also the same thing happens, right? Either you create something or read a document or like update it or like delete it. So for all these things, they came up with something called as HTTP methods. HTTP methods, basically. So they used HTTP for this entire thing. And in that they gave methods called as a get. So for every action, they have a method. So get, put, so get, post, put, so create, delete, all these things are there. Create and delete, so update. So, you know, so there are many others also, but not everything is famous. But if I can corresponding these two, you can understand. Post is for like creating a record. And if you want to read a record, so we need to use get. And if you want to update an existing record, there are two things. Update a single record or like the one column in a record. So entire record, if you want to update, so we have like put, but like one column in record, if you want to update, so that's where we have patch. So like that. And if you want to delete something, they came up with a delete. So like this, they created methods. At the same time, for the responses also, they gave with standard codes. In terms of HTTP codes, what could be the codes and all these things. To understand that, so I can say initially, yeah, for all the CRUD operations, if I can list in one shot, this is all the things. So get, post, put, delete, patch. And apart from these main things, there are other optional like head, connect, options, trace, patch. So the above things are like most commonly used. And one more interesting point is for this REST API. So the data response can be like either a JSON or an XML, or there are other formats like Atom, OData, etc. Most famously, you will see JSON. So it doesn't mean that even if you go others also, it will work. And also here they introduced something called as idempotency. So this is like very much needed whenever you're going for interviews. What do you mean by idempotency means? A request. So if something is idempotent, if you do 10 times or 100 times, it gives the same response. So generally post is not idempotent because when you create a record now, so with my name and details, it gives one record. And even if I create a record, it will create a new record, right? It will not give the same record number. So the result will not be the same if you do more than once. So that's why post is not idempotent. But if you go to the case of get, if you ask to go and get the 10th record, it will give 10th record only. If I ask to go and give so records with name starting with Uday, so it will give all like that only. If you ask 5 times or 10 times, it's the same. Stated that the database is not changing. So similarly, put, delete, all these things are idempotent. So there is one more thing called as null point. Get is the so-called nothing is like added or changed, right? Except logging, whenever you do. So whereas in other cases, at least something is changing. So nullipotent means, so when you make a call to that method, nothing should happen. So that is called as a nullipotent. So these are like very unique things which you don't find outside. And one more point here is about about the restfulness. So this is like most common question which was asked. So what is a rest versus restfulness? So many people call that their API is a REST API. But the API, when they were created, so they will have like maybe, so they will do just two things, get and a post, that's it. So all operations they manipulate within that itself. Means ultimately, who creates the interface? Again, we human beings, the developers only. So how they were created, based upon that, the comments comes. An API is called as a RESTful if it follows all the principles. All the principles means slowly you will understand that. So it should, every action should have a corresponding method only. Means reading should be done from a get method only. Create should be done from a post method only. Update like this should happen in put or like patch exactly. So for every action individually should go, rather than handling everything in single method type. So that kind of things, many things are there. So to know more about this, there is something called as the Richardson maturity model. This is most important. If you want to know whether a particular API is purely RESTful or not, so this model is very much needed. Richardson maturity model. So they say like it takes some time for you to understand and digest these things, but it's okay. So slowly go to it. If it satisfies all these levels, then we call it as a fully RESTful API. So if not, so it is a REST API. So I hope now understood the basics about this one. So fine. So maybe like I will point it as readme.md. Okay. Okay. I was in this another directory. Next, after this, so now we need to think about consuming the data. So how do I consume? Let's see. So if you want to consume the data, there are two ways. I told like most common modules are like either requests. So the built-in urllib is one module. urllib. In that only urllib2, all these things came. And next is like request is another module. Request. So they made it life easy. And at the same time, there is http.request. This is another module actually. But there are quite number of good modules like this. So, and especially when you work with asynchronously. So there is something called as the AAO HTTP. So like that, there are modules. Either using these also we can do, or with pandas also we can work. So if your REST API is giving like JSON or something, so pandas can read and it can automatically convert to data frame. So that is also a possibility. So these are all the modules we have. So to work with these things. So I will work with the most common among them. So like this. So if I start with like first urllib module. So urllib module. So first I go with like a small urllib usage.ipynb. I created a Python notebook. So first, so the most common question everyone comes to thing is that when you are working with urllib, so first import urllib module. If I say okay, I give the environment, it works on it. It will take a moment to activate it. Once it's done, we can work. Yeah, it will connect. And if I in due course get for the DAR of this one, it will give the list of attributes that it can do. So you can see ignoring the things. Did you see that it has only 4 attributes? Means error, parse, request, response. It's very simple, right? Now, firstly, we will deal about the parsing. So in the parsing case, what it actually does. So parsing. So parsing means it can help you in multiple ways actually. So the most important thing people do is like urllib parse actually. What all things it can parse if you see. So maybe like I will do like a print dir of. So this urllib dot parse. What all things it can parse if you see. Okay, if I do a dir print, you see. So it can do a parsing of all these things, parsing the results and others. And if I ignore, so already see the very basic things, like what all things it can do. func tools and all this. See, any module, you will have other modules also part of it, because that modules, when they implemented, they used other modules. That's why you can ignore them. But you can see parse query string, parse QSL. So like, so especially that whenever you have a URL parsing and others. So there are many things. See here, URL split, URL, so unsplit. So like use parameters, users query, relatives, like that we have. So first thing is like URL parsing. If I work on like URL parsing, so this is how you do. See here, from urllib there is a parse. Within that parse, urllib parse is there. So I want to parse the URLs. Now for parsing a URL, let's say I have one URL. So I take that result. Say like result is equal to like this. So I have some URL like this. Now I need to parse it. So if I parse and ask for the result, now did you see? The result is having like schema is like HTTP. So netlog means the basic website, means DNS and the IP address which we need to connect. And after that, what is the path on which user is connecting? So this is how, right? Then any parameters we have given are like query parameters, like that it is parsing. So now explicitly if I want, I can ask, hey, so print of f of, I can ask like all of them individually if I have money. So what I can do, so for this result dot schema, so whatever you're seeing there, you can individually ask. So similarly, if I go with the next one, so the port, result dot port, and similarly you can ask for like, so result dot get URL, get URL. So as it is a method, you can ask like this. So like that, whichever we have, all of them we can ask. Our parameters, you have like parameters also you have seen. Result dot params. You see now, what are all things you are getting? The entire URL and all this means whenever you have a URL, if someone gives to decrypt, so we can parse this to get all the information. Now, so you understood this one. So now if I give different variants also, you can identify it. Let me give like simple examples. If I give this example, now you see, you can understand everything there itself. And similarly, if I give another variant, say like this time, see here, I gave like this. The difference is you can notice. So Gudo. So here I didn't give the port number. When I give your port, it will take default is. And whenever you connect to any website, the default port will be like either 80 or 443. It depends upon the schema. Here you didn't specify the schema. When you don't specify the schema, the browser will take the choice whether to go to HTTP or HTTPS. Yeah, so like this, if you pass like any URL, so we can get it. So next, the point is about urllib.url join. So the another feature is about URL join. So working on the URLs. So whenever you have like 2 or 3 URLs, and if you want to join them, so that's where we can go here. So if I have like 2 URLs, you see now, I have this is one URL and this is another. So python.html is one page, facts.html is another page. Now if I want to join, so what is that? It's not like a concatenation. It will take 2 URLs and remove the endpoint, and the last page it will change. Did you see? So that is the beauty of like URL join. So rather than doing traditionally, it will help you like this. At the same time, say I have one more example. This time I have 2 URLs like this. So www like that I have, and this is another thing. So if you notice, exactly right here. So both are like this. Now, how do you join it? If you see now, did you see? So http colon www dot so and so. Did you see? From where you asked, from there onwards, the remaining part was taken. So like this, you understood how to join. Similarly, if you want to split it, so that's where we need to go the other side. So if I have, say, a URL, URL is equal to something like this, http dot, so www, so python.org/docs/ some hash is there. So from that, if I want to get something specifically, I can ask. So first it took it. I need to pass that to the urllib.url split. So once I passed that, if I see, it will individually give what is the schema, what is the net log location, so path, so query parameters and fragments. So, and this query parameters, till now you didn't know, right? So if you say query parameters, age is equal, say page is equal to, say, 10. So if this is the case, now we see what is the query parameter. So fragment. So, and like here you have like ampersand and you pass multiple values. So if I say ampersand, say like, so doc is equal to 1. Doc is equal to 1. Now we see after ampersand, what all you got, you are coming, that is coming like this path. So this is maybe like, I will write document. Now you can differentiate. So what are is coming after this question mark, it's coming like this, right? So like this, anything you can have. So if you don't have hash also fine. You see, as we have hash, it is coming the other side. When you don't have cache, it came the other side. You see now, if I first have the hash, so it is coming everything like a fragment. So generally hash won't be there if you have anything. Sometimes in the web pages, if they don't know what path to mention, they will mention a hash. So that is when developing the Django application, you will understand Django Flask. So this is how the schema works. Now, if I want individual details, like say, hey, get me the URL or anything specifically, you can get. So like that, you can take anything and you can split. Now you have this URL. I want to take this URL and I want to pass and I want to split. This one I need to take and I want to do get URL. So this R2 is taking from that URL and trying to split and get you. So like that, this is one example to understand how to parse the URLs. Now in the parsing, so we need to understand how do you parse the strings with query parameters. If you have query parameters, how do you parse it? So to understand more on it, so I will take the same thing. So URL parse and like parse query parameters. So there is something called as parse query parameters, QS. Till now we didn't work on it. So this query parameters, yeah. So parse query parameters will work on certain things. And this is a built-in module, in fact. You need not worry to install and others. So if I have something, let's see, I am taking something like this. Query parameters, I told, right, after question mark, if you have anything, that is the query parameters. If I say like this, then keep blank values equal to true. So you got like that. Red is equal to 5 you give, blue is equal to 0 you give, green is equal to, you didn't mention. Means green equal to empty. So did you understand? Now individually also, if you want, you can ask the values and get it. So individually if I want, I can ask like this. So whenever the value is not there, it will mention like a mark. But if you don't mention this keep blank equal to true, then it will not have the third value placed. And similarly, if you have that, so values as like each one is like a 0th value like that. You see what I am trying to do? I am doing a get. If this key is not present, you get like an empty list. So within that, you are asking for the 0th value, means you get an empty string. Or 0 means first one is, if it is a none, it will go to the next value. This is called as a short circuiting logic, which I told when you are working with the logical operations I told. So means from that, how to get the values I told. In the same fashion, if you want to do the encoding. So encoding, I told, encoding means, so for better transmission, especially when you're working with URLs, it is very much useful because URLs expect not every character can go. If you write a space or something, it cannot go directly. So for that, we need to encode it. So if I have some details, some dictionary of things, when it is doing encode, So now did you see how it converted? It converted in such a way that, so for transmission it is good. So whenever you are going. And one more last point within the urllib, so is that in terms of how do you work on parsing the robot.txt file. So what is this file, sir? How it will be useful? Generally, when you're doing a web scraping, you actually go for this robot.txt. So for every file, almost all websites have this site called as robots.txt. So if we go navigate to one of the website, let's see. So robots.txt. So robots.txt file. So sample file, say LinkedIn. Or for every website, they will give like this robots.txt. Means they say that, hey, you should respect me. You should not do any of these things. Disallow means I am not allowing you. So officially they don't allow. That's the reason when you're doing web scraping, you should respect the robots.txt. Every website, almost everything will have it. So it is a best practice to avoid it. They say that I have these many URLs. So you see how many endpoints are there. So nothing is allowed. But what are is ever allowed that they are giving. So help you can go, business, all these things you can go. So similarly, using each agent, Google bot image, you cannot do. So like that, for every user agent, they are giving certain things. What are all things? If you see, Baidu Spider, so Yandex, Yeti, these are all different browser user agents. For those browser agents, you should not do it the same. So now to work on it. How do you work on these things then? So let's see. If I have like a robots file, I can work on it. So to understand it, say like I go with some website and get that robots file. So first, to understand this concept, you need to import that robots file and you need to create a robot parser. For that robot parser, if you give something and you can read it, say like I created this robot parser. Okay, after creating it, I need to give it. What is that URL we have seen? LinkedIn dot so robots, right? So I can give it. Almost every website will have it. We need to give that. So if I set it, so then like rp dot read, if I do, it will read the entire LinkedIn dot robots dot txt file. You see, so it is like very big. What is saying? So truncated output, I couldn't do more. So sometimes they don't give like programmatically to access. What is saying? SSL certification verified needed. So certification has expired. So this is another important point you need to be aware. Generally, when you are making a hit to any website, so they go with like either HTTP or HTTPS. HTTPS means hypertext transfer protocol. So means like a communication channel, but it is secured enough. So means like, just imagine this is like a bus. This, yes, if you add, it becomes a secured bus. What do you mean by that, sir? Means, so you will have a extra certificate. So the concept is very simple. If you are aware of cryptography, if you remember what you have learned, there is something called as public key and private key cryptography. Public key means and private key very simple. Okay. So the common thing is like for every house we have a lock. So other person also comes with the same lock and opens the box, it will open, right? So when you're transferring something, along with that you pass the key also, or predefinedly you pass a key, so it will work. So that is like a simple way till now we know. But in reality, it doesn't work like that. So there is something called as a public key encryption. Means there will be two keys which we need to encrypt. So everyone in the world know one key. So only you know one key. So like that. So this concept of certifications, SSL comes with that. So where like a certificate is issued when the website is created by this LinkedIn authority, and whenever in the browser or so and so when you are executing, these browsers will validate whether that certificate is correct or not. Similarly, when you are working here, so certificate verification code will check that whether certification is verified or not. Sir, at this moment, we don't know how to get the certificate and all, so ignore it. If I go for HTTP, so not everything supports HTTP. So some websites support. Most of the website these days doesn't support. So I have one dummy site which can support it. I am taking that example. So if I ignore it, I go with this one. So here, so there is something like something music dot so and so, which is allowing it. So some dummy sites are there which allows. So simple, it is going and reading it. If it has some data, it will read. So if it don't have anything, it won't read it. So like that. So if you, I think it's not giving anything now. Some days like things will change these sites. They will remove. So if I go ahead, so in a browser also, I'm not seeing much. Yeah. So user agent anyone disallow. So I allow only this page, nothing else I'm allowing. So means they will first. It doesn't mean that they will write one file and they will keep silent. In that website when they're designing also they will do things like that. So that's why you don't see them. Okay, leave it. So once if you get it, for suppose, you can work on it. As at this moment you are not getting, you need not see anything. But if you get it, you can work on that request rate and all this information. So next, apart from this, next one more thing to work on it is, yeah, if you want to fetch the information and others also, we can do. So whenever you have. So like that, I told for every website, there will be this thing. So this robots.txt, they will try to respect this whenever you are working. And similarly, so one more thing about the urllib is that, so till now we have seen when you are making a request, sometimes requests are failing, sometimes it is working. So I want to go for one use case. Generally outside websites means sometimes they work, sometimes they don't work, right? So let me go for this Python website. So Python website means only Python has this one. So let me go for this. If you see this Python, so this is like pips, Python enhancement proposals. So for that, if I go for like one, so did you see pip -001? So let's see now. If I do like pip 2, now did you see 002? So there will be some pages with this kind of name. So 008, I got it. Or like some 42, I view 43. Means 43 page is not there maybe. So they will maintain that, like, 4-digit or 3-digit something. I think 3-digit they are maintaining. So maybe 43 is not there. We can genuinely ignore some 250, 283 or something. Yeah, there is something. So finally you understood that if I hit this URL, I get something. Now for this, if I want to create a script to work on it, so let's go ahead. So to work on it, so instead of doing here, let me write in a separate thing. So in a separate example, say example.py. We have this URL called as http so and so, something I want to hit and I want to get the result. So obviously we can get it, close others, fine. So to work on it, first what I do, we need to have a URL. So for that URL, we need to do like a urllib.request.url open of any URL. So this is another thing now. So first I take it. So to work on this URL, so I import it. So basically, so whenever you want to work on this one, till now what you're doing from urllib.request, your URL opening. If I want to work on urllib.open, like this also it can work. So, okay, from URL, so fine. So if I want to work on it, so either like this or another way. So whatever URL I have, this URL I have. So URL is equal to, I wrote. Now, if I want to work, import URL open. So this URL open, when you are working, you actually get the response. So say yes, result is equal to URL open of this. What are the URL we have? Okay, this is best way. Yeah, I have URL. Now I will do like a print of result. Oh, it's not like this one, right? We need to have a setup to execute. So I need to navigate to this directory and work on it. Copy path. So it is trying to execute something. Okay, leave it. Okay, so Python b so and so. I think I was still there. Yeah. So Python b so and so. If you notice, you got some response, but it's a response object. So if you get a response, you can read the data. So means like if it is good, you want to read the data. So I want to say like print of res.read. So you will get the data. So this time if I execute, oh, great, right? I got a HTML page. You got, this is like a HTML page. You cannot understand what's happening, but this is a HTML content. So like that you get every time. So what I want to do is like, I want to create like an automation. So for all these values, I want to check. So for this number, I am getting right some 0 point so and so. So maybe like I will take some numbers for each of the number I want to do. So then like I will do like a get pip is my function. So it will take the number. So select pip number. So pip number and it will work on it. So I create like an automation. So generally automations means nothing more. You see the real world main problem that they are facing and you try to address it. So if I do like a for loop of for I and so and so, I can do a get pip of this again. I can pass. So whenever this number is coming, I can do like this here. So I can pass like f of that number. What are you doing? But it should have like a minimum 4 digits, and it should be like a 04. Means what are you give? It should be like this. So for our understanding, I do like a print of this URL also. URL is equal to. So now if I want to execute, I don't want to print the result for a moment. So I want to just execute it. Whether it is executing for each of them or not. You see, for each of them it is executing, but sometimes there is failures also. Means not every time the result is success. So where the result is error here. So what we do generally, we do like a try. So generally, so we do like an except, exception. Hope you remember as so and so, and you do a print. This is how we do it. So whenever there is an issue, so you don't want it. In other cases, you want it. So I don't want even this result also. So in other, whenever there is an exception, that only I want. You see. So for others, it's working, but till here, but suddenly for one of them, it's not working. So whenever it found, it took like a HTTP error, 404 it is saying. So whenever you have an exceptions, so generally it's not a good practice to go for the main things. You should go for some other, so specific exceptions. For that, they came up with something called as urllib.error. Means like urllib, we need to import that also. They say that you import like this. Observe till now when you are importing URL, say I want like urllib.exception. So see, if I do like exception and if I print it, print of error. So generally till now we know what? If I have imported a library, I can use urllib.error, right? But if I execute now, right now, so it will say. So it is going like this. Maybe I'll do REPR of this one. So maybe like here also REPR of this one. You see now, HTTP error it is coming 404 not found. As I know, this is like particularly 404 not found. So I can specify here. Hey, it is like 404 not found. So, so given URL is not found. URL, maybe like you want to give URL. So this is how you write such that users can better understand. This is how you handle it. But generally, so when you're importing, you write like dot error. Now if you see here, if I clear screen, so for other things it is working. It is saying that given URL, this is not found. In other cases, it is giving. So what I will do this time, instead of reading them, so I will pass as a response. So if everything is good, then return response.read. So now this particular function is created in such a way that whenever you give, it will give the response. So no more printing URLs. You get it. So then, so for every time I can ask, what is the user? So what is the response? I can get it. Maybe like I will, instead of printing like this, I do like this. So for each of the pip, what is the length of the text I'm doing? Because like it's heavy to read all the content, right? I read it. So for a particular thing, it is not giving. So in that case, what you should do? So I need to handle this exception. So in this case, you are reading a text. So in other cases, you are not reading anything, right? So then we should like return empty. So here all, so in the other case, so if I do like a return of like this, so then what will happen? So whenever you are reading, if you are getting fine, in other case, it will be 0. So fine, right? You got it? So you created some kind of typing and handling it. And also, there is one more interesting point I want to bring. Whenever you are reading the same data, 100 times you read also, the text won't change, right? So in that case, if you want to optimize, there is something called as like func tools. Func tools. In func tools, there is something for caching. Whenever you get a repeated data, you can pass it. So I am saying like max size is 32, means till 32 values it can store. So now the execution will be much more faster. Did you see? Compared to previous one, it took much faster. It didn't take that much time. So that is the point of going for this ones. So urllib cache, how do you work on it? I told. So now the point is, whenever I want to execute, so instead of getting like that, I can also ask like, hey, get from this cache also. Get pip. Get pip is my function. Dot get cache information. So like that also I can ask. If I ask like this, so it will execute first and give the information and cache. It is saying that cache is like hit 4 times, misses are 5, like that. This concept of caches are also of multiple types. So, but like quickly to tell you, this is something called as an LRU cache. LRU means least what is that? Least previously used. Means like whichever is least previously used, that will be going away. So means most frequently used will be there. So then obviously that is what we are expecting, right? So indirectly that helps us. Next, going further in this. Next is after this, more into this urllib request module. So see, yeah. In this urllib request, we have multiple things to do. So that I want to show. So for that, instead of I writing everything, so let me pull that. Open with text editor. This is how you copy a Jupyter notebook from one place to another. So generally Jupyter notebook will be open directly, right? If you open with like a text editor, it will open like that, where you can paste everything and you can navigate back. So now you see here, directly if you open, so it will have everything. So coming in this case, so what is that we have? So get my public IP address. So urllib.request, till now, just now we saw. You give this URL. This is like a free URL. If you connect it, it will give the response. So every time you do a urllib.connection, you get an object. From that object, like a file handler, you read the content. So you get like basic URL. You see the status, which is 200. There are multiple statuses. I will tell you that status information also. So the 200 is like the most common thing you will see. Means like everything is good. If everything is bad, there are like different categories. Next, I will tell. So if you see a dot read, it will give the response. So you see this response is like in a binary data, right? So byte string. So that's what we need to be aware. And like if I want to decode it, so from a byte string, if I want like an ordinary string, I need to decode. Vice versa, I need to encode it. So this is what we need to be aware. Next, like this, if I go further, so if I need to parse a HTML, so this parse HTML, if I need to parse, there are brute force ways also. Means like I can do a split by this value. So split by this value. So before and after you get, so finally you get an object. So from that you do. So like that, what I am doing brute forcefully, I am splitting by this and I'm getting the first value. Like this I got. So in that, if I split by this, this body, then obviously I will get the previous one, right? So like that, I am splitting and getting the brute force value. Instead of I doing like that, we can use a regular expression also. I told regular expressions are very handy in these kind of things. You know how I wrote a IP address, you see? IP address means it's a numbers. So I wrote slash digits. And it can be like a minimum 1 digit or max 3 digits, right? Till 255 something. So I can write like 1 to 3 digits can be there. So 1 to 3 digits, 1 to 3 digits, 1 to 3 digits like that. So, and you also, instead of a D, you can specify how much numbers are also there. So for the first digit, so if there is any limit, all those things also we can specify. So next, going further, if I need to get all the valid web links of a website, you see, this is very interesting. If I go to stackoverflow.website, so Stack Overflow, if you go, there are multiple, so web links will be there. So basically, if you hit, that website is giving a response. If I do dot read, it's a very big data. You see, so you cannot read it directly. So whenever you have like too much large data, it's better to read to a file. So whenever you read a file, it will do and store there. So let me do this one. If I take this object, so first I need to collect it. So, and if I execute it, yeah, it will take a moment to do it, but it will execute it. So whenever you have a large data, it's better to save into a file. So then it's easy to analyze from that. So I'm taking that to a file for us to see. At the same time, I am using LXML module. Hope you remember in LXML. So generally it is designed for the HTMLs, but there is some subpart called as HTML also. For that, if you pass your HTML data, it will create a DOM object. DOM object means document object model. So this is like primarily same for both XML and HTML. From that, you can rule something called as XPath. XPath means just imagine like a regular expressions like that you can think for the URLs. Whenever you want a URLs which are like href URLs, means like when you go to a website, you will understand. So that like every website will have hrefs and others. So if I go to like a Stack Overflow, so any website is not a website what you are seeing. If you go to the settings, so more tools and see that, so if I need to see the page source actually, if I right click and see the view page source, so that's where you will actually see. You see this website, if I go to the view page source, you can see that there are hrefs. Href can be like a entirely a new URL or like a relative URL. Means stackoverflow.com/opensearch.xml, or like it's a completely new URL. What is that URL doing? That is nothing to do us. But like here, you observe like that. If you want to identify this kind of hrefs and you want to get them only, so like that, if you want to specifically get, so we can use this kind of XPaths. XPath will help us to identify them. So if you see the XPath, so what we have seen. So for the XPath, I gave like, hey, so all, A means like in the all, try to get the hrefs. So it will give all the hrefs. From that hrefs, I am trying to say that if the href is starting with the HTTPS, only then give. So means like there are some hrefs which are relative paths, you don't want them. So like that I do. So I got all hrefs and like this. You see, these many URLs are there. So sometimes there are repetitions also. So in that you can do like a set to minimize that, and you get the final count. So like that you can do. And from some URLs, it will have some query parameters, some path parameters, all these things. And similarly, not only this, you HTML data, image data also we can get. If I go to this website, so this website is containing some images. You ask for anything, it will give an image. So HTTP 200 means like, so good. So if I say 201 means like a record created. So it is saying 201. Similarly, if I give 202, so like that you give anything. If I say like, 401, you see, unauthorized. So it means like the images they are showing in such a way that you can understand. So payment required. Like 404, most commonly you will find anywhere. So resource not found. So means like in the 500 series. So means like server side issues. Server is happening something like that is showing. So these were like different images, right? It is giving. How do you get the image data? Just imagine everything is data. So when you give a connection, you get the response. You ask all this information. Is it a verified? You are not going HTTPS yet. So nothing worry. So HTTP type is like HTTPS. They are not verifying the certificate. So fine. So means everyone is like HTTP or HTTPS. Not everyone will verify it, especially when you tricky data, financial data, all those things, they will be more stringent. So if you are asking for the data, it is just like anything. So, but like if you open to a browser and do it, you see like if I do a dot read, so I got the data. If I print, it will be like a garbage. If I see, I don't anything. But when you want to write, I can say like with open off. So what are the data you have? Open. So what is that? Cat. So dot jpj. So you want to write. And when you are writing, you should write like a write binary because it's a binary data. So some file handler. So a simple file handler dot write off whatever the data is there. The data you need to write. And it will automatically do it locally. So it will do. So I think like you don't know what is data. It just execute it. It forgot. Maybe I need to execute again. So I took a URL. Okay. I think I need to run this entire script again. So if you do the entire script execution again, it will do it. It will execute all the scripts one after the other, and finally it will come down. So finally we will get the entire data. So when it is executed, you will notice it. You see a cat.jpg file is there. So that is how you downloaded an image and save. In the same fashion, when you get a like a music file or video file, the same things you can do. Okay. So like this, we can work. After this, there is one more thing to work on. That is onto the, yeah, this is another example to work on. Yeah. So a real world example to work. I want to work using this one only, consuming an API only. So with using this one only, say like I want to work on, say weather.py. This is the weather information I need to consume. So this weather information is coming from some website. So if I go to that, generally some websites will have authentication, some websites will not have authentication. So if there is a authentication, you can go here. You see here, there is some website called as api.wonder. So Wonderground, I think they moved it. Some of the times what happens, these people will either remove it or like pass on to someone else because these are not profitable, right? So that's why you don't have anything. So now the API, so I don't know like how they are exposing. Generally for every website, there will be a developers page. So they will say like developers dot so website.com, developers dot so and so. So similarly, I think they have gone. Similarly, if you go to any website like developers dot say facebook.com, developers, right? See, I did a mistake. developers.facebook.com, developers.google.com. So like that you can go. How a developer can approach that website, they will give the information. You see, Facebook gave like a lot of things. So for a developers, like open source or dev tools for integrations and others. So they have. And similarly, so there are like multiple websites like this. So okay, anyhow, it's not working, leave it. Similarly, if I go on the next thing, so that is into the request module. Request is another module which will be very much helpful for us in this scenario. So request, like any other module, it also has a lot of information to do. So first thing first is like whenever you want to consume something, uh, it for the request they made it easy to consume something. So how to do is like, let's see, yeah, copy path. If I have a request session, same website, whichever I have, I can consume from it. So if there is a website called as HTTP lib, yeah. So basically there is one website which is like a savior for us, people like us. Close other tabs. I don't want others. HTTP bin.org. HTTP bin.org means it is like a thing mainly for the developers to work. So if you want locally to work also, you can download it. Any website. So if it is a website is different, a web REST API is different. So whenever they want to do something as a REST API, they give like a open API or like a Swagger. This is called as like a Swagger. What is this saying is like, what are all endpoints they are supporting? Generally, when you go to any website, what they will do? They will give all options for you. Like you can choose something, whatever you want. So like that here also, they are providing multiple things. If you say like, so methods, if I click, they're saying like, these are all methods I'm supporting. And this is one endpoint. Like that, like status codes endpoint they give. If you give like a status and a particular code number, so you can create, add, delete all operations you can do. Similarly, you can do like a request inspection when you give a request or IP or user agent. So this is very easy for you to understand. Let me do get user agent. So this is like Swagger. Every website should, so anything when you develop, they create a documentation, right? The Swagger is like a documentation for APIs. Remember this word very carefully. Swagger is an API documentation for APIs. If I do like here, it is not asking any inputs, just executing. So user agent, from which user we are executing it. To know that this is a good way. If I click on it, it is saying like this. Oh my God, it is not, I don't know like why it is taking infinite amount of time. It shouldn't take much time, so it should go fast. So generally the response code it is giving 200. The request agent, so header information, etc. Not sure, maybe something was broken. For these open source things, this is the main problem. If you go for any, so enterprise versions, you will find things very good. So the reason main like we don't have much of things. So mainly everything is like open source. Open source things are like this. Um, if I have like multiple requests, let me show you these examples. Uh, yeah, if I go for this one, so close alls, you see here. So if I can work on some examples again, yeah. So this is one good example which was brought by someone. So I'm taking the same copy. So first, if you want to work on it, basically I told about the things, right? How the requests are working. Just to show you in a typical way, it is showing. From one system, you are connecting and you are requesting. So the server is present somewhere else. There the REST API will work and it will provide us the information. So then for this, I told like different kinds of protocols are there. SOAP and REST are like most common. So the protocols are like HTTP and SMTP. So So SOAP uses even SMTP also, but REST purely works on HTTP. And in terms of message format, mostly SOAP is like XML only. So REST can be like many formats, even OData and others also they can be there. So I told about the WSDL, means instead of actually giving the code, they give an interface. So we don't have WSDL, we have something like RADL, Swagger, like that. So these are all different abbreviations, you can ignore it. Swagger is like a documentation, or like Open API, or like RML. So all these things. So SOAP is like more standardized, means anyone who is using SOAP, they should use in a proper way like this only. Whereas REST is not standardized. It is up to the user. That's the reason I told about the Richardson maturity model. So how much your request is so and so. And also be aware, any request when you are making, it will have few details like request method, get, put, post, or so and so. What is the URL that you are hitting? For that URL, is there any endpoint? So, and like the request header information. So from whom the request is making, all that information. And what is the request body? Sometimes when you're making a request, you pass some body also. So like that. So for this, I told some information also like that. So create, post, all these things, methods are there. Till now we discussed. So what is a URI means like uniform resource identifier. So means like that URI will be only one. If you are given URL, you can go to a particular server only, particular application only. With one URL, you cannot go to two. That's why it is called as also called as unique resource identifier also. Uniform resource identifier and unique resource identifier also. And every URL can contain both query parameters and path parameters. If within the path we have anything, that is path parameter. And if any query, we have query parameters. You see, yeah, this is a very good website, I think. Yeah, they have like open. So these are like path parameters. Path parameters lines, if you go like this website /us/ so and so, you are asking with US information and like 902 so and so. So in the URL itself you give, that is why it's called as path parameter. But if I give like in a query parameter, like question mark, and if I give something, that is like a query parameter. So is it better to go with this one or that? Means it depends. So how the application is implemented, how the developer has implemented, because there is no standardization, anyone can go to anything. So, and see, in terms of the request headers, header also will have like key values. So it will give the authorization information, cookies, like tokens, other information it will give you there. So means like the very basic thing is basic authentication whenever you make a request. So similarly, so the authentication can be of different ways. Basic authentication, next bearer token. So this is like different authentications. Then like we have JWT, OAuth, all these things are authentication methods. Then in terms of the request body, I told you already that like what all things it can have. So typically if I go with the statuses, yeah, this is important. Every request, when you're giving, you get a response, right? That's what you're noting in requests. So in requests, so it can be like 100 series, 100, 101, 2, like that. It means like informational, things are going good like that. So if it is 200, means everything is success. Means you asked a request to get the latest movies from the IMDb website. So if the request is successful, so it will give 200. And in 200 series, everything related to that, like 201. So if you want to create a record, if it is created 201, it will be. So like that, so by the daily, when you are remembering, you will remember a lot. And 300 series is redirection. When you give a hit, sometimes most of the banks, they don't expose to the outside world directly. If you think like any URL they are providing to outside, they have a lot of middle people in middle. Means like there will be a proxies. So what are the request it is taking? So they will validate the user or anything and then redirect to the corresponding things. These redirections can be permanent or temporary redirections. Means sometimes the website is not good or it is having too much traffic. So a load balancer can redirect to something else. So like that also it can happen. And 400 series means client side issues. Means you didn't give the request properly. They asked to provide the age is a minimum age. So age you cannot give like minus number, right? So like that if you give something, so those are like client side issues. And when you give some logic, one of the edge case was executed and the code was broken at the server, because server is also a code, right? Something need to be processed. So if it is failed there, server side issues. And like going back, so I think we discussed it neatly about it. Yeah. So anytime when you make a request, see here, this is a website for which we are making a website. So the response is a JSON. So mostly when there is a JSON response or text response, we can see this. If it is a CSV response, we cannot see, right, in a browser. So they're showing like this. So this is one of the JSON response. And in the bottom, if I open this one, so in the bottom you will see that in the advanced sections of any website, if you go advanced sections, there will be header information. If I go to any of the website, so if I say like if I go to any website, if I go like, so inspect, I can inspect it. So it will open a new tab altogether for us. So if I want to go to more advanced topics, so so every website is there will be more tools. In that there will be developer tools. So the same thing, when you clicked also the same thing happened. So developer tools will come. These are all developer tools. So whenever you make a or fire a request, so the corresponding thing is executed. If I go to anything and if I try to get a request, did you see? When I'm doing a get request, so it is making a hit to this. You see how many requests are happening, 200 response. So each of it is a response. If I click on it, so one of the response, it will have the header. So if you go for the header, it will have the request URL, request method, status. So like remote address, policy, etc. And response, what we got for that response also. What is the response? How much time it will be there? What is the date? So what is the expiry date? All that information will be there. So for every request, you will have that preview information. Sometimes if you have response, so initiators and timing, how much time it took for each of things, like that information you will have. So after going through further, so you can understand more about this thing. So I think like encoding information others I am showing. So let me go with the real code. I have the code for it. Yeah, let me show the exercises. You see now, so I have an exercise here using the request module. So perform a request to this website and get the response. How do you do means like import request in the top. So in the request module, it's very easy. So response is equal to request dot get of what are the URL you have. So this is the URL we have. So I take it. So means like everywhere the same URL is there, right? So you can take like URL. So URL equal to so and so, or like directly give the URL. You give the request and you get the response. So I print the response. Response. Now if I want response, I go like this. So copy the path. The Python. So exercises 1. So it gives the response after going to this URL. You see the response would be like an object. Same like how you did with urllib.urlopen. You did a dot read, right? So like that, when it is doing, it has some interesting options. So when you want to get the data, if you need to do not like that. Response date, if it is a text, you can directly get the text information. If it is a text. So if it is not a text, it seems like a JSON, right? You can, in that case, you can ask like that also. Means any response can be asked like response.content. So it is like a generic for anything. If you know that it is a text, you can ask like that. And if it is a JSON, you can ask directly like this. So now if you see 3 times I'm asking. So in the first time, as I'm asking the content, it gave the bytes data, it's a string. Second time it gave a text, like convert it to an ordinary text, decode it. Means this is a third party module, we need to install it. Pip install requests. So then if I ask for JSON, it gave it. In the same fashion, sir, can I do .xml and get the XML? No. They have given only for JSON. For XML, they didn't give, because most of the time you will see only JSONs. That's the reason. And similarly, here it was, you can like check the value. Here you need to check the status, request status. How do you get the request status means? Same thing. So response dot status code. So if you see this thing, now you will understand what is the status code. So status code is like 200. So means like if the request is successful and you are getting the response what you are supposed to get. So this is like request. So generally how we approach is like, whenever you get a response, first we'll check the status code. If status code is good, only then we go subsequently, else we don't go. So if the response, then I will check for the content type. I need to check. How do you check the request response content? I have a response. From that response, I need to do. So if I ask print of response dot headers. So if you see the response dot headers, you see what will happen. You got, this is the response dot headers. So in fact, if you want to access it, you cannot access directly. You need to convert that to a dictionary. So headers. So response headers is equal to dict of this thing. By default, it's not a dictionary. Though you seem like a dictionary, it's not that. So then if I ask for this response, response headers, so you can see that it is converting to a dictionary and showing you. So if you want to see it much better, you can use like a from pprint. From pprint import pp. So instead of pprint, if I do like this, so you can see the things better now. Python exercise 1. You see now, you got the entire response. This is a request header. So response header, sorry. In the same fashion, for request.headers, if you do request header also, you'll get. Now what we need to check, the content type. So whether the content type, and observe this content type may not be C capital, T capital. So it all depends upon how the server was implemented. Again, that is also a code, right? Someone should need to implement in some language. So sometimes this name may be changing, a bit tricky, but most of the time they'll be saying like this. Because it is not standardized, things will be like this. So I need to check in the header whether it has a content type. If content type is there, whether it is application JSON or not. So that I need to verify it. You see now, content type is like application JSON. So that is what I need to verify, right? I verified. So now next exercise. So get to the response, get the response body. So encoding is not set. So set to sensor. How do you get the response body? Earlier also I showed. So response, whatever is there, dot body. So like this also we can get if you want something. If I do response dot body. So okay, you don't have response dot body. Yeah. So response dot content. So response dot content means you saw. So I told how do you get the response dot content? So it can be of 3 types I told. Content is like a generic. If you get image data also like that only. If you get a image data, you cannot ask like text, right? So if you get like anything generically like that, but especially if you get like a JSON or text, you can do. So text is an attribute, JSON is a method. Observe the difference. So you get it. Next, you have like check the response body. Country has the value of United States. In the response body, I need to check for the country. You see, you got a lot of things. So if I do like a PP, so then you can better understand. So this is the entire content, right? In that it has postcode, country, and other information. So in this response body, I want to check the country. So how would I do? So generally it's a best practice to write like this. Response, so data is equal to response dot JSON. So, and like in that I need to check. So print of, so response data of this country is equal to United States or not. So United States. So it will check. If it is correct, it will say yes. If not, it will throw an error. So false. So next, if I want to check for anything, so like this you can check. If I want to go to the place names, I want to get the list of all place names. Means under this level, there is another level. See here, JSON will be like this. It has an array of values, right? I need to loop over each of the places to get it. So to get it, first I need to go to this one. If I do a print, so maybe like an empty print, so that you will see what you are doing. So I need to print response body. In that, I need to go for places. If I go to the places, you will notice that places is like again a list. At this moment, there is one, but in future, there can be more than one. So what we can do? So we can do like a iteration and ask. So each of place for each in so and so. If I do like a loop and get values, you can see all place names I am getting. If there are multiple also, I get it. So this is how I do it, parsing. And similarly, I have this object. What is saying, check the response object places has an array length of 1. Obviously, it has a length of 1 only, right? The places. So that I need to check. So then like see here. So what I do? Assert. So assert this is equal to, so length is equal to 2, right? So length of this result is equal to 2. I get it. So this is how I created one exercise. I solved all the problems. I think like, yeah, sorry, it is 1. So that's what it will mention. So it is 1. It's working. So like this, I worked on one exercise. So the remaining exercise, I will paste it for you. So you need to complete it. It's not that difficult. You can do on your own. So means like, so create a test data, some kind of test data, and we need to pass to it. So the URL is very simple. This is a URL. In this way, we need to pass. So what are the test data we have? The country information you need to pass here, and zip code you need to pass, and it will obviously do it. It's like a path parameter you are doing. So like the path parameters and others also I do. I have added everything here. So ready-madely. So you see here. So you take it, pass on to the JSON placeholder with a post. You can do a post request. So these are all assignments for you. So how to do a post, how to do a get and others. It shouldn't be a big deal. So you can just solve it. This is another test where you have another thing. So where how do you pass to that and get the values? So this is also another example. So with this, like we have primarily touched on the request modules and others. There are like different examples basically. If I can go on, and if you want to see here, HTTP lib bin actually. So if you do HTTP bin, so this actually gets all the things. So this is how you get a data. And if you want to post, means you want to add some data for the same URL. So if you do a post, you need to pass a payload also. So if you do like a JSON, you can say the payload like a dictionary you can pass. So, and if you say like a data, so you can take like that and do it. So like this also. So this is like a put, means updating an existing record. So then like you are deleting a record. So whenever you want to do. And like if you want to patch an existing record. So if you want to head options, options means it will not do anything, just it will check. So what all things you have like that. And also you have like a streaming response also. Means when you are asking the data, they may not give all the records for you. They will give like each iteration you ask. They'll give 1 byte of data like that. If you do like that, see here, in an iterating, every time I'm iterating, I'm getting it. On the response object, every time I'm iterating. So like that, so you can get like a streamed data. So this is all streaming data. And similarly, if you want the cookie information or something, if they provide some endpoint, you can consume it. But the concept is same everywhere. So get, put, post, everything. So if you have like extra things like you pass on. And similarly, if you have authentication, that's more important. You need to pass the authentication. Authentication can be like very basic. This is called as a basic authentication, username, password. But in real time, no one will use like this. They'll go for like a basic OAuth, HTTP OAuth, JWT, and all these things. So if you are supported, you can just go through it. So I have added some examples. So I don't know, like some are like even broken this just now, but like some are there. So for some of the things, they already created some built-in modules. If you see DuckDuckGo, which is a competitor for Google, they added some things for it. So like that OpenStreet. So I have like many things like this. You can just walk through to understand more of these APIs and work on it. And similarly, I added some kind of things also. So if I want to get the HTTP statuses, I wrote a endpoint actually. If you do this endpoint, you see, so every time it make a hit to that endpoint. So URL, I showed previously also in urllib module. So every time we check the status, if it is 200 and the content type is image/JPG, then I get the content and I dump to a image file. That is how I did there, right? And similarly, if you want to change your desktop background, so there is like C types actually, so which we need to use, which is a Windows specific. In other languages, it doesn't work. Means every time I'm taking the image down the line and I am trying to do it. So C types is something it is taking. Import C types. So C types means whenever you want to work with Windows things, this will be handy. This is like a standard command to show and execute. If I navigate to this directory, copy, and if I do like, so if I say Python a so and so, it will execute. And did you see what happened? Every time it is creating a folder and it is storing. So locally, it will generate a folder. See here, HTTP status cats, and it is store all the images. You see, so all the images are getting stored. So these are like 100 series, and it doesn't mean that 500 means there were 500 responses codes. There are only few. You can see after the in 100 series only 4 are there. After that there is 200 series. You see, so in the 200 series also there won't be everything. So only few. So it is like for better recognizing. Generally, if you go to any apartments, they will mention for first floor like 10 so and so, for second floor 20 so and so. So for better recognizing, right? Like that for better classification, they have gone. After 207, they have 300 directly. So means like redirection. So for everything they created. In the same fashion, I wrote a script for even dogs also. So the same thing. I know there were codes only for these things specifically. For those only I executed. And you can see the codes for that. And it works. So the content. So that is how you do. And similarly, if I want to download anything specific also, I can go. Say like I can minimize it. I can stop. And lastly, the web scraping. Web scraping means if you have a website, how to get the data. Same like how you get it. You give a website, you get the URL and use web scraping. So using Beautiful Soap to get it. So this is how actually you do a urllib.request of any URL and get the content, right? And you store locally. So that is what we know about web scraping till now. So after getting this data, so how do you parse the content? So for that, you can use LXML parser or anything to parse the content. So when I asked for the Google, I got this website. Means I told you, right? If you right click and show view page source, you get everything. So from that, if you want to parse, you need to go for Beautiful Soap. So if we URL, if you have like this, you get the response, pass on to that Beautiful Soap. Beautiful Soap needs some kind of parser. LXML is one such parser. So once it parses, it gives a document like Prettify. From that, you can ask the headers, particular content. You can find all any, if you know, you need to know a bit of HTML. So to parse it, and you can get all the information. So that is how it works. For the same thing, they have like one more example called as Gazpacho. So same like a Beautiful Soap, Gazpacho is another module, but this is much faster. I worked in one of the projects. It is like 20 to 40% faster than like a thing. Give it a try. You see, so using soap also I did, using Gazpacho also I did. So using Gazpacho, see here. So same like this thing, Gazpacho also has a soap. So Beautiful Soap. So you take a parser, do a find and get it. So like that soap, find same API. So instead of Beautiful Soap, Gazpacho you can use. It's both are like third parties. We need to get it. So from a website, if you want to get the content, this is how you do. So lastly, we have like a GraphQL. So that we can see tomorrow. We can stop. So take this as an assignment. Whenever you have free time, I made a list of all the things. So dummy APIs, which are, so without authentication, still there are few. With authentication, these were there. You need to go create an account and you can work on it. So we can do a real-time usage if you want. There is something like Twilio. With that, you can send voice messages, text messages, and calls also we can make, and we can attend calls also. Stripe is for like payments. And if you want like emails related, there is SendGrid, etc. And if you want some random text generators, we have some modules. So like that, there are many modules. So you just give a try to understand more about this.